Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, everybody. Welcome back to my YouTube channel and to another layout design video. For this week's offering, I have a much smaller space than most of the designs I do. It is around 9 feet by 16, and it is for an HO scale layout. When the client first contacted me, he already had a layout design in mind which he wanted modified to fit the space. It's an old plan from a Model Railroader magazine. I'm not sure of the date, but it is slightly larger than his room and also didn't contain quite everything that he wanted. Now, this is the first plan of the room that I drew from his description. It turned out it's not quite right. Two of the four walls are actually mostly composed of windows. Here is my second attempt to get the room right. The left end wall is mostly glass, as is the south wall. So this wall along the bottom of the plan is two large windows with a sliding door between them. And there's another door in this corner which he's told me can be permanently blocked. The photographs that he sent me of the room showed two light switches that I've drawn here. I asked him about the locations for those, and he said that neither of those needed to be kept accessible because he's going to be using remote control for the light and ceiling fan in this room. So I can block everything at this end of the plan. Here is the first plan that I drew for the room. It is a simple end-to-end rendition of a short line from a visible staging yard through two intermediate towns to a small terminal yard, with a cut-off across the end allowing for continuous running. Now, the one scenic feature that was very important to him was a long multi-span truss bridge. This is a rendition of a bridge somewhere in Florida, I'm not sure where, and the Walthers deck truss bridge is a fairly close approximation for the prototype. And it turns out that we have room for four of those spans end to end without running into problems with the curve easements at either end. Here is another version showing the whole plan flipped side to side, and this works a whole lot better because putting the second intermediate town on the south wall, obviously it needs to go at the longer side because there's not enough room in this corner for it, and putting it this side gets it further from this terminal yard. If we go back to the previous design, we can see that it was really close to the terminal yard, so the two towns would have tended to run together, making the railroad appear shorter. Which is why we both decided that this was a far superior version. Now, I should probably mention at this point that the client is running exclusively 4-axle diesels and freight cars mostly 50 foot or less, so a curve radius of 24 inches is perfectly satisfactory, and that's what I have drawn the plans of. You may also notice that the aisles are also compressed from what I normally draw them at. In most cases I work on a minimum 3-foot aisle wherever possible, but in this room 3-foot aisles would just take up too much space and leave very little space for the railroad. And since the client is going to be operating by himself the vast majority of the time, I shaved the aisles down to 30 inches, feeling that that was probably about the best compromise in this situation. Here is the next version of the plan. I've drawn in a lot more industrial spurs and also added some cosmetic curves along both sides of the room. Note that even where I have a long straight, I've angled it away from the fascia so that it's a lot less boring. The only place where I've got track running straight and parallel to the fascia is in the visible staging yard. Now, although the railroad is intended to be freelance, just based loosely upon a theme, I have kept the same town names as on the original plan. And I did that mainly for ease of comparison in my descriptions for the client. One thing the client particularly wanted was the Walthers 2-stall engine house, and his initial sketches showed it at the terminal yard, so that's where I've put it here. Since we're running diesels, there's no real need to turn locomotives, but putting a turntable in the staging yard allows for a convenient run round, and it also takes up far less space than a turnout ladder, so it is well worth putting it in. Now, getting this plan into the available space requires a fair number of curved turnouts, and I'm fortunate in that the client allowed me to use fast tracks because that gives a much greater variety of curved turnout geometries than any other track range. Here I've started filling in sample industries and other details. I've put a few roads in, 2 grade crossings either side of Bradenton, and an overpass that helps disguise where the track disappears through the backdrop and the entrance to the visible staging yard. You may also notice that there is an extra track in the staging yard. It's always worth putting in as much as possible. I've also shown how this space in this corner by visible staging can also be used for an extra industry if he wants to. Although at this stage I did ask him if he had any particular reason why he wanted the engine house at the terminal yard, suggesting that it might make more sense to move it to the staging yard, and he agreed to let me do that. Here is the final version of the plan with all the scenery filled in. You can see that I have moved the engine house to the visible staging yard, and there's also room for a third locomotive storage track behind it, or you can switch as an industry using as fuel delivery or something like that, and the extra space vacated by the engine house allows for at least 2 additional industries. Now, since the railroad is meant to represent somewhere in Florida, I felt that a second water feature was highly desirable, so I put one in this corner where there really wasn't anything else. There is a good variety of industries. They're not necessarily set in stone, and some of those may well change as the layout comes to fruition. But I wanted to show a good variety, allowing for many different car types. And I think I've done that. And I think that is about all there is to say about this rather simple layout design. Although it is not the end of this project, you will see it again because I have the contract to build it. So once the big Sydney project is out of the way, I do have one other small railroad to build, and then I'll be straight onto this one. Before signing off, let me just leave you a clean version of the plan. Feel free to pause if you want a longer look. Before signing off, one more thing I want to mention. In a recent layout design video, a couple of people commented about making the Maris a different colour so it's easier to see. I did that for this one. Please let me know in the comments below if it makes a difference. And with that, I will just sign off here. So until next time, have a great week, and I hope to see you back for my next video. Thanks for watching, and bye for now.